Hello and welcome to The Right Idea, where we discuss the people, policy, and politics that drive Texas. I'm your host, Brian Phillips. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and with me, as always, is my co-host, our Chief of Research, Derek Cohen. All right, Derek, we are in the throes of session, and I probably, like I said, ask you this every week. Is the things going well? You're getting tired yet? Getting any sleep, or spending too much time at the Capitol?
Actually, I'm spending a little less time at the Capitol than I have in previous session.
New role,
yeah, it's the new role. But that is not a blanket reprieve. In fact, I was just up there for a long meeting yesterday. That went quite well. But I will say, though, if there's one thing that I am getting tired of, well, I shouldn't say we're getting tired of, but it's probably all the winning.
All the winning happening?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like James needs to be medically supervised now.
We'll get into a lot of those wins, but just generally in the Capitol, I mean, is everybody still hopeful? I mean, we've got the State of the State coming up. We haven't really technically started the legislative part of session yet, but everybody's still amped up and energetic. And
yeah, I would say so. And I had a little speaking engagement earlier this week. Shout out to the Magic Circle Republican Women's Club. But one of the things that I focused on there, and I do see this echoed somewhat in the Capitol. Obviously, it's this time of year. It's a lot more of the professional folks that are in there as opposed to the activist folks, just because it's constitutionally prohibited from having hearings at this point. But we generally see the spirit of optimism, right? The spirit of gratitude for where we're at. Obviously, there's still items of contention in both chambers, and there's passions that flare over this or that. But that being said, is that generally speaking, people are just happy to be back to work. Even the folks that I know do not align with us on certain issues, they're back there. They're happy. They're getting ready to take those L's with a positive spirit this year. So yeah.
Do you think the biennium plays into that? I mean, that's a feature, not a bug, that we only meet every 2 years. And then even among the 140 days, we're only really legislating, 80 of those 140 days. But we work a lot during that into 18 months to get ready for this moment when, the State of the State's going to happen on Sunday. We're going to have some emergency items and get down to business, and people put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going into that. Do you think that's part of it? Is that people that sense of optimism and hope,
a little bit of first day of school vibes?
Yeah, sure.
Because the spirits haven't been broken yet.
Yeah, just shine up their boots and wear their nice hats and
I think
salmon suits and go to work.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. I think more. A stronger driver, a better part of that explanation would actually be, I think a lot of people are genuinely encouraged, especially folks on our side of the political aisle, is that you generally see people more encouraged because I think they think they're going to have, and I see no reason to believe why this isn't the case, a better partner in D.C. for so many. And look, our constitutional order is not set up to have everything come as dictate from Washington. What we are set up for is for relative state autonomy. That was something that the Biden administration and Obama before him and, going all the way back, there really hasn't been a respect for federalism, the way that we need to run our state the way we need to. And so I think that even, in areas where we can agree that the federal government has primacy, like, for example, border security, immigration, things like that, we see such moving with such alacrity, such vision, such clarity already, and I think that's what's giving folks the buoyed spirit. Again, not because folks on the left think, oh, Donald Trump's doing X, Y, or Z, and I like that, but because it's like, look, we have the clarity and the I would say at least the knowing where the boundaries are to really start working within our own domains.
Yeah, and I think we did a big research project on Texas identity, and it looked at different groups within Texas and kind of what brought us all together as Texans. And it wasn't right versus left; it was sort of much higher level than that, or I guess actually the other way, much deeper than that, and kind of what it is that we all believe kind of makes us Texas. And there was kind of this idea that, like, no matter where you stood on things like school choice or taxes or healthcare or whatever, at the end of the day, we in Texas were going to get the policy right. Like, it wasn't going to be something stupid or extreme or anything that would embarrass us, throughout the country like they have in some other states where you're just like pulling your hair out. Like, what did they do in California this week? And it's sort of that idea. Then that's one of the ideas that actually brings people to Texas, is that it's this sort of safe space, if you will, of sanity. Really, it's like the safe space of sanity, and that our policies and the way we're going to structure our communities and our laws, we're going to have this sort of base in like freedom and goodwill and letting people do what they want to do.
And I would be remiss if I didn't jump on and highlight another major finding of that study, that being, that promise is not exclusive to any one group or belief set. We saw it replicate across religion. We saw it replicate across ethnicity. We saw it replicate across where in the state, geographically where in the state you are, and basically income level. So that was such a central contention. We take everyone in the state, even Kansas City Chiefs fans like Jefferson.
That's a good segue to our hot take of the day. No, but that's right, and that's not to say that we don't have disagreements about policy, and that at the end of the day, one policy has to win and one policy has to lose, and the people on the losing side are generally angry or upset about that, or they're vow to come back the next day. But you're right. At the end of the day, we're trying to have the debate. We're not shutting down anybody's ability to speak, or shutting down their freedom of speech like they do in places like California and New York and other places. So,
or certain school boards here.
Right. I know. I'm sure there's probably activists who are listening to the show thinking, tearing their hair out and being like, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, but let's get into it. The hot take of the day. Let's go to the other big thing that's happening on Sunday, other than the state of the state, is of course the Super Bowl. It's the Kansas City Chiefs.
Next Sunday. This Sunday we have the Pro Bowl, or what's left of it.
Oh, that's right. They have the 2 weeks in. All right, so we got another week to wait on this.
We got a flag football game this week.
But we might as well go ahead and talk about it now, just because, as you alluded to, our illustrious producer, Jefferson Drexler, is the world's biggest Kansas City Chiefs fan in Texas.
He's literally Taylor Swift.
He's got the jersey on. He actually has a Taylor Swift jersey on right now. No.
That's actually DeAndre Swift. That might be an Eagles jersey.
But your take on this? Number one, are you surprised to see those two teams at all?
That was when I think when after last weekend, when then the Super Bowl was set with those two particular teams, I think I was like, oh, finally a break in the winning. Good, we can finally catch our breath. And the Super Bowl that absolutely nobody asked for is now on
something you can finally get mad about. Is like why
exactly. Hey, you know what? We could actually still get a Lions-Ravens Super Bowl if Donald Trump has the courage. There are a lot of executive orders that may or maybe constitutionally suspect. I know, and look, if I had to guess, I'd guess the Eagles probably do have some sort of DEI program. So who knows? All that to say is I think the two teams that are there, it's not like they. Obviously we can cast all the aspersions about the Chiefs and the referees, and, I will be sending those memes to Jefferson all throughout 2 Sundays from now. But, both the teams are there on merit. I was talking last night to a friend of the show, Brad Johnson, and, he's obviously a big Lions fan, and he was lamenting because you remember the Lions got, beat pretty handily by the commies, the Commanders. Mm-hmm. And then the Commanders just absolutely just
got destroyed.
Just absolutely did not show up against the Eagles, and likewise, the Bills showed up against the Chiefs, but they were still in it for a lot of time, but neither team really played well. So both these teams are going into this. Going into this game, not on the back of this mandate victory. They're going into this game. It was kind of like, I guess we're the last team in the AFC. Well, we're the last team in the NFC. Oh, you want to play a game about it? Yeah, we should do that.
Well, I think a lot of people have lost a lot of money betting against Patrick Mahomes the last 3 or 4 years, so I'm going to take the safe bet. And I don't even know what the line is. It's probably like -2.
It's Chiefs given 1.5.
Yeah, so it's within it's not even real. It's basically a pick 'em. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Chiefs. Where's your head at?
You know what? Just to be contrarian, I'll go with the Eagles. I told Jefferson this is not because I root for the Eagles, because I don't think anybody
who could actually root for the Eagles.
I don't know. Let me just put it this way: my respect for civic property not being on fire or thrown in a river is too strong to endure me to that fan base. Is all I'm going to say.
Generally, if I don't have an actual team in the hunt, I'll look to see who where the Texas Longhorns are, and of course the Chiefs have Xavier Worthy and they have Charles Omenihu on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to go with my 2 Longhorns and the Chiefs.
Actually, I'd have to go with the Chiefs anyway because Travis Kelce, former Bearcat.
There you go.
There you go.
Any Michigan folks on either team?
Not that jump out I was going to say, both teams have plenty of injuries, which Michigan did. So, but no, all that to say is, both the teams deserve to be there. I'll probably go with the Eagles just because, again, if it's a pick 'em and you're taking the Chiefs, I tell you, I'm not a huge fan of his, career wise because he was on the Giants most of the time. But I mean, you can't watch Saquon run the ball and not just be in awe. I mean, who hurdles somebody going backwards?
The reverse hurdle was probably the best play of the year.
I think that must have been like Trump's 2016 election for some folks on the left. That just shattered my brain.
Yeah.
Like I was unable to move on from that point in history. So.
All right, well let's go on to things that are happening this Sunday. I was wrong about that. Governor Abbott announced the state of the state on Sunday. Not only is this an opportunity for him to talk directly to the people of Texas to tell them about what's going on in the state, very much like the State of the Union and what the president gives, but also this is when he traditionally will present what's called the call, which is the list of emergency items that the legislature would then be permitted to work on, or at least vote on, right? They can work on legislation, but generally they don't unless it's on the call, because you can't have any actual legislative floor activity unless it's on the call. So this is always very big moment. This will happen Sunday afternoon. Everybody, like the worst kept secret in Texas, in Austin right now is that school choice and ESAs are likely to be on the call. Your thoughts on that, and then curious to think what, as you're running around the Capitol and people are trying to guess and figure out what's on the call, what are you hearing?
Well, I don't know where you're getting school choice. It's not like the governor, has been calling special sessions time after again, has been engaging in political activity with that as a central focus, has been saying, I am going to put it on the. I don't know where you're getting all this. No.
Well, and then of course, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick literally said yesterday we're going to be voting on it on Wednesday. So yeah, that's a good indication.
Yeah, I mean, huge if true. I mean, you really have to parse it out. No, obviously, I think that at this point. And well prior to, nobody could doubt the governor's sincerity on school choice. Like he has just been, to be honest with you, the hardest charging governor on any one single issue that I've experienced in my entire career. Mm-hmm. And I think that's I struggle to find a distant second in my memory. So I do think that's going to be on there. And I also think that if you look at the, and we can talk about this in a different item, but SB2, and I think they find that largely, I mean, there's still opportunities to improve, but I think that largely comports with kind of his view, or it approaches his view. Mm-hmm. Other things that he's going to name emergency items. Water, I could see water. Water would be, you mentioned water. I could see water. Obviously, what's the stat that people keep saying that now we're at 1,600 people moving here a day, and none of them are bringing water with them.
Yeah.
So I think that about water, though, it's going to be interesting because water is going to demand a very broad discussion. And obviously we know just from Senator Perry, what he said on our stage at the Texan event yesterday about kind of like a water funding program. We're also going to, what are we doing about like desalinization? That's another component in that machine. The thing with desalinization is that that's also very energy intensive. Mm-hmm. And then we get back into the energy side.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue because it's not one, I mean, even energy can break right and left and conservative and liberal, whether it's climate change versus, reliable energy or whatever. Water, there's not really, I mean, I've been working in politics over 25 years and there have been water and ag issues and things that have come up before Congress or before the state, but it's tough to tell how this breaks in terms of like, what the policy is and then which side is going to be on which. It's really not a partisan issue. It's more regional, right?
Yeah, right. No, that's actually a really good observation. I'll illustrate a couple of
I have one per podcast. So.
Oh, I was going to say, you threw the flag already then?
Yeah, that was it.
Red flag on the ground.
Cut it.
Oh, no, but if your actual good point actually lands, you get it back.
All right.
So there you go.
Nice.
And that was a good observation. So the one issue I would say, or where we see fissures specifically on water, is it tends to be, much like everything else, rural and urban. Obviously,
and urban's like we have all the people, but urban or rural's like we have all the water.
No. Quite the opposite. It's much more. It's much. I would say more fractured than that. Specifically, is urban usually has the rights to, because a city usually comes up around somewhere where there's either an aquifer or water supply, something like that.
Rivers,
and so they usually have a lot of the gatekeeping rights to that, while some of the outlying areas, like say, some of the areas that are out in the hill country, but not near the Highland Lakes, might not have that ability to do it. And they might not have the tax base to actually fund an infrastructure project there themselves. And so what do we do there? You can't really have a project that scales with a tax base, whereas, Lago Vista is in sucking water out of a puddle versus some of these in like the Highland Lakes. I'd say that just for discussion's sake. But that's urban and rural is really another thing. And then another one in which we're going to have a very robust discussion, I'm sure, is basically about water rights. Obviously we have a lot of people that tune into this to learn all about riparian law and how we parcel out water. But no, I think that if we talk about any sort of claim to a communal source, lake, aquifer, whatever the case might be, surface, subsurface water, you're going to then have an issue of, okay, well, if they have a surplus in some area and someone seeks to commoditize it, that moves them back to the end of the line for the access to that, right? And so we basically have a setup that kind of prohibits water markets. Now, water markets wouldn't be the end-all, be-all, because you'd still have issues to discuss about transmission.
Right. That seems to me to be the biggest one, right?
Exactly.
Getting the water from where it is to where it needs to go.
Exactly. And so would you need a new lattice network of pipes? What could you repurpose, especially if it was going to be non-potable water, like ag water or something? Would you be able to reuse some of our already existing pipeline infrastructure? Then we start getting in pipelines, we start talking about eminent domain, and it's just this cascading thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that once it kicks off, we're going to see a lot more of these kind of nascent arguments being exposed, schismed, and then brought to the fore.
Who's jumping out there as kind of wanting to lead this discussion in the Senate or the House?
Oh, there's no discussion about that. That's Senator Perry.
Charles Perry? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'd been talking about it to his credit. It's not like, he licked his finger, stuck it in the air, and felt which way the wind's blowing, and then got to the front of the parade. He'd been talking about this for sessions.
Yeah.
Representing the Lubbock area. Obviously, that area of the state really has some serious water concerns. And so he's learning firsthand that he's doing that. And now we're starting to see that both in the House, Senate, and on behalf of the governor, that there's a willingness to let's get something done in this space. Now, what that is, again, I know he's got a lot of work put in on a water infrastructure fund, which would actually, we talked about how are we going to fund these, regional or smaller things. That would have a bit of a solution to that, but there's still a lot more broad base to talk about, but he's still leading the way on that.
Another interesting one, I think, would be the border, and I think that would be immediate. As I talk about all the time on the show, border is the number one issue in this country. Border is definitely the number one issue by a mile in the state, and there more needs to be done there. But there's a sense, there's a hopeful sense that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on kind of news of the week, that that the president is having some serious success down there. And so I'm interested to know if border rises to the level of an emergency item, and if it does, what exactly that might look like.
I don't know if that's a great observation, and I don't know if
two. That's two I got now.
Well, but they're like negative valence; they cancel each other out.
I've been practicing, so that's kind of unfair.
A negative times a negative, just is a negative. So, I don't know. I don't do math in public. But no, you're absolutely right about the border insofar as. He sent the bill to DC already.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he sent the bill. We'll see what happens, but he sent the bill. $6 billion ain't cheap. But what we do on the border, I think, would really, because we talked about this with Celine last week. We can't just take Operation Lone Star and flip the switch, right? Even if the everything we were doing is now blessed and replicated by the Trump administration, and they completely go, Texas, you're a good and faithful soldier, at ease, we'll take it from here. Even if that's the case, the operational intelligence, basically the capacity to understand what is going on the border in that military or paramilitary context is something that the National Guardman from Kansas is not going to have, right? So there needs to be some sort of interoperability issue. There needs to be some sort of some exchange of intel and information, because otherwise, every lesson learned on the border then would need to be learned again. Now, is it going to be learned a lot quicker with somebody, with the support that the federal government's now putting into it? Yes, but it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be. So all that to say is I'd be willing to see what the future of Operation Lone Star. I think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah. Any surprises, you think? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about protecting kids online. I doubt AI necessarily rises to the level of emergency. Because the other thing, too, about the emergency items is it's not like, we just sit around and wait for the governor to tell us what the emergency item is. There needs to be some infrastructure set up. I mean, you saw this with SB 2. There was already a bill that was introduced. They have already had a hearing this week, which we'll discuss, and they're ready to vote on it next week. I mean, these things, there has to be you have to be down the road quite a bit for it even to make sense for there to be an emergency item, for the next month.
The only time I would disagree with that is if there was an emergency item in the classic sense,
right? Exactly.
Like
and then why would he wait a month if there was like a real emergency? He's not going to wait till January.
Exactly,
29th.
but largely, what the use of emergency items are currently to our discussion here are basically super priorities. Like ones that not only are we elevating to the top list of the top list, but we're actually saying, look, here we have some where there's a lot more expeditious methods that we can employ. Let's use that for these.
Yeah,
and so
But to my point is like, even if that's true, even if these are my top priorities, I mean, maybe that's the distinction I'm making is like, it's not just a list of like what Abbott thinks is the most important stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is specific to being able to work on them and get them passed even before March 1st.
Right.
So there's got to have been some way more activity than just simply writing a bill. There's got to be like, you kind of know where the debate's going to go. You kind of know where the votes are going to line up. And like, there's got to be some more substance to it before you put it on the call. Otherwise, nothing happens, and then what was the point of putting it on the call?
You got to do all the intel gathering and all.
Exactly.
Intel and info gathering. Yeah,
exactly. All right, well, let's switch over to the Capitol from the governor's mansion, and today, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick put out his priority list, and this is more of here are my priorities, and these are the things I'm going to work on. And he put out his priority list, his first 25 bills. We don't necessarily go through all of them, but rest assured that things like school choice, the budget obviously is number one, but things like school choice, electric grid reliability, public safety. There's one on the assisting the federal government on deportation efforts. So there is a border bill on there. There's also some other interesting ones. Combating Alzheimer's. There's water is on there as well. 10 Commandments in school, protecting the freedom to pray. Texas Doge. I mean, jump in here. Protecting kids against AI pornography. Jump in here on some interesting.
Well, I'm going to flag Senate Bill 9, or what he's flagged as Senate Bill 9, reforming bail, keeping violent criminals off our streets. If this doesn't get done this session and has to get addressed in 2027, oh my God, 2027, and this has to be addressed then, this will have been a live, active, hotly contested area for over a decade. So everyone remembers back in 2017, Trooper Damon Allen was killed by somebody who was out on bond, who shouldn't have been. And geez, at the time, Andrew Murr and John Whitmire put out a bill, largely like what we're seeing today, that would force, really keeping those dangerous people behind bars. The problem is, and I know I've made this point on this show before, is the Constitution requires that somebody get a bail amount.
Yeah.
You could have done the absolute most heinous thing, and if you don't follow these, and if it's outside of these very tightly prescribed constitutional criteria, you get an amount. You get an opportunity to post that.
And isn't the wrinkle that it has to be an amount that they're reasonably could reasonably pay according to their means?
Exactly, and that's what that's.
So you could have this heinous crime. Some poor person could commit this heinous crime, and that's how that happens, right? You get these headlines.
You never know about the rich uncle,
right? Yeah, and it's like $40,000, and everybody's like, "What am I? He did this awful thing. How the heck?" And it's because the rules are set up that they have to get a number, and it has to be reasonable for them to pay.
Exactly, and the funny thing is, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you guys are just against cash bail," and it's like, no, we're just, we've never advocated for getting rid of cash bail, but what we have advocated for is making the primary concern, as you said, risk, right? The actual safety that one poses, or lack of safety one poses to the community. And unless we actually get 100 votes for that, unless they actually get a constitutional amendment, you're not able to do that. So it's going to be interesting.
One of the things that we're looking at in our new poll is we're trying to get to the bottom of this too, because it really has been one of those things that's been very kind of a tough nut to crack for a decade.
Yeah.
And for those who oppose, our efforts, we're curious to know, like, is the animating principle here that they just don't believe that someone who's accused of a crime, even if it's a serious crime, and even if they've been arrested and there's probable cause that they committed the crime, do they just not believe that, like, someone, if you release them from jail, that they're likely to commit another crime? Or is it that, at the end of the day, the Constitution is what it is, and it says that you're proven or innocent until proven guilty, so you can't detain somebody who has not been proven guilty for this, this whole time during the trial, because there's sort of the liberty angle. So we're trying to figure out, is it they just don't believe that they're going to commit another crime, or they're taking more of a constitutional angle? I think it'd be interesting to find out.
Well, to Steelman, and again, I don't want to get out in front of the actual poll, but to Steelman, the conversations and the arguments I have with folks coming from the left, people who are very honest brokers in what they believe, especially in our disagreement on this particular issue, it's usually the constitutional argument, saying it's innocent till proven guilty, and even if the person was, arrested and adjudicated several times for violent offenses, maybe not able to own a firearm, and then was found trespassing. A trespassing is a Class B misdemeanor. Why do we need to have, hold them on bonds? Like, well, because the magistrate didn't have the information that you're trespassing outside their ex-girlfriend's house.
Yeah.
And like, now, I think you can create a much more three-dimensional story, and that's one of the things that we did get into the magistration process, is really trying to get that three-dimensional criminal history, and saying that the magistrate, the person who sets the bail, actually has to consider it. Yeah. What we need, though, and I'm just going to cut right to the chase, is you need 100 votes, because you need to put it to the Texas
Constitution.
You need to put it to the Texas, or the voters via Constitution, because what we need to do is we need to change the fact that we're one of the few states that has no form of practical preventative detention.
So it has to go on the Constitution, which means it has to get 100 votes in the House.
Yes.
All right, just real quick to close up this segment, there's some things on here. I think some of us are like scratching our head, like, didn't we fix that last time? I mean, there's, no drag time story hour. I mean, there's... Where's the other one? Keeping inappropriate books out of public schools. I mean, we had knockdown, drag out fights with the left over this, and I vividly remember passing legislation to this effect. So I'm curious, like keeping non-citizens from voting. I mean, like, haven't we done all that? Is we still more to do on those issues?
Well, that sounds like a leftist, Brian. That's what like they would say about this. Like, you hate the belt and suspended? No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, for those things specifically. Okay, let's go one by one. Drag time story hour did pass the Senate. They did have those knockdown dragouts. Kind of unraveled in the House, with defining what a drag show was.
Right. Okay, well.
And, credit to Senator Hughes for his doggedness and really trying to get a workable definition there.
Oh, this was the thing where they were claiming that technically under the definition, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders could be considered a drag show because of the way that
I know many people, if they were prevented from performing, that would not necessarily complain about that. Then the other thing, to talk about the books. Yeah, that got blown up by the courts, though. Wrongfully so, and I know it's still working its way through there, the Reader Act. But yeah, that can be restructured in a different way. And, just with conversations we've had with Representative Patterson, I think they're looking to double down on that, even if that court remedy doesn't come through, or find something that threads that needle. And then some of the other stuff, like make Texas healthy again. I'm not sure what that specifically means, but
24 and 25 jumped out to me. Making Texas healthy again, which that's the whole rage right now, is the MAHA movement in D.C. But then educating Texas students on the horrors of communism. Yeah. Fantastic. All right, let's go see.
You don't see me push back on the communists.
Yeah, no, I think those are going to be fun debates to see which folks in the Senate and the House stand up and say, no, we absolutely should teach them on the benefits of communism.
Probably people who think communism is pretty great.
All right, let's get on to a couple of the big things that happened this week. Of course, we're TPPF, so we have to talk about school choice, although I'm doing this of my own will and volition and voluntarily, because it was a very, very, very big week for school choice. As you said, we just never get tired of winning. Today is only Wednesday, and we've had three major happenings on school choice. The first one is the fantastic Houston Hobby Poll came out, and they do a great job of the way that they do the mechanics of the poll and the way they put things things together. And not just because I happen to like one of the results. Some of the other results I'm not a huge fan of, but they do a really good job. Anyway, it came out Monday, and the poll says that 67% of Texans support ESAs for private schools. So that was a big narrative buster, Derek, from some on the left and some false flag conservatives who say that school choice is not conservative, and that, or more to the point, that Texans don't support it. In particular, rural Texans don't support it, and yet the poll showed that 67%, 2/3 of Texans, do support ESAs, specifically for using them at private schools. The question was very thorough. I don't need to necessarily read it here, but it was the question that they asked was very, very thorough in terms of explaining what the actual policy was, that it was an ESA, it would be used for private school tuition, it could be used for other things like tutoring and other things.
Co-curriculars.
Yeah. But again, and then you look at through the demographics of the poll, the breakdown of the poll on partisanship, you still got, 72, 71% of independents and Republicans. No shock there, but 59% of Democrats said that they support ESAs. You look at, there's this idea of rural versus suburban versus urban, no difference across the board. 67% urban, 65% regional hub counties, and then 71%, actually more than any of the others, 71% in rural and semi-rural counties supported ESAs. Just a big narrative buster for all the folks who were trying to claim that there's no support for school choice in Texas.
The only part I disagree with is you call that a narrative buster. This is like the 7th poll in a row, not by a hobby, but Trib's polls have showed the same. The polls that come out of UT have showed the same. Mm-hmm. This is like the folks, and this is the thing that I assume we're going to be talking about the hearing yesterday. But this is the thing that is absolutely shocking. It's like these people. Let me rephrase. If November has taught us one thing, it's that people are very slow and stubborn to learn lessons, right? Obviously here, I don't know how many more times we can say this more clearly, how many more polls that, they're not these, DeVos-funded push polls or, stuff like that. These are like polls that are like...
The University of Houston.
Yeah,
I mean...
noted right-wing conspiracy monger, University of Houston. But all this, they've all showed the same thing. And then if you post it, or we post it from the account here on X, and then you see like just the usual, just knuckle draggers come in there when they're like, oh, nobody talked to me about it. Well, maybe at school choice, you would understand survey methodology better.
Well, this goes back to my my New Year's resolution, which is to believe the people when they tell you the same thing over and over and over again.
And not to believe the people on the internet who don't even have the courage to put their name on a tweet.
So that takes us to Tuesday. So that was just Monday. That takes us to Tuesday, where they had, as we mentioned, the hearing in the Senate Education Committee. They had the debate. They let all the people come in who wanted to come in and say whatever they wanted to say about it. And then at the end of the day, they voted SB2, the ESA bill in the Senate. They voted it out of committee 9-2. So that's the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, now the Lieutenant Governor is saying publicly that it's going to be voted on the floor on Wednesday. Which, I don't want to speak for the Lieutenant Governor, but he'll be the first to tell you. He's like, I already told Governor Abbott we passed it 6 times already, and we'll do it again.
7 times the charm. Let's go.
Your lips to God's ears, man. But yeah, that's to say is, so I did watch the hearing, and obviously we had our policy experts out there. George Borrego did a fantastic job. A whole bunch of other folks from similar organizations did a fantastic job. But the resistance is all the same boring stuff. The only new wrinkle that we've seen is this bill defines the poverty line as 160,000, and I'm like, the feds define the poverty line,
right? Yeah,
is that like I think this bill. I was about to say the feds, which up until like a month ago was ran by all your buddies, that's the one who sets this. But like, look, you want to say that's an arbitrary distinction? That's fine. We can get rid of the poverty line thing. Like, you want to make this not a needs tested program? Let's go. But regardless,
and we don't want to do Mandy's show. If you want all the debunking of all of the ridiculous arguments, Mandy's show, Parent Empowerment, goes through those.
I refuse to spend as much time on hair and makeup. I will tell you that. That's my commitment. But you're absolutely right. But like the arguments are so stale. They're so boring. Did you know school choice was racist? And it's like, wow, that is a very interesting fringe theory that was never borne out. But can you tell me how this bill is racist?
Yeah.
And again, it's just like no lessons were learned. Like, well, if I just call something racist enough, it goes away.
Yeah.
And I don't actually have to grapple with the merits of the proposal.
One interesting thing that was noted is that there were 2 no votes on the committee. and both of those individuals that voted no send their kids to private school. Now, I'm not begrudging them for that. My point in bringing that up is that they clearly understand that the schools that they were assigned to are not serving their own children better than where they choose to send their kids. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. Why would you pay for private school and send them somewhere if you could send them to the quote unquote free public school if you thought they would get a comparable or even better education? So they understand this idea that parents want the best for their kids and that they will make those sacrifices to make sure that they send them to the place that they think will be the best for their child. And this is what I say all the time. And this is, and I wish more people would think about it this way, is that the one thing that we all agree on, that the left and the right and that everybody agrees on, is that if given the opportunity, just like these two individuals on the committee have, if everyone else was given the opportunity, millions of parents across the state would choose something other than what they're being forced or what they're being assigned to in their public school, right? Millions of parents are looking at that saying, that's not that. I wish I had something else, something different, but only a few parents are actually able to make that a choice because of the cost or because of the distance or what have you.
And I'll point out that we're in the same general ballpark with the $7,200 they get paid a year for their particular position. So if there's money coming in outside of that, that's a different thing, but not everybody has that freedom, like you said.
And I just wish that if people thought about it, let's fix that problem. If schools are not being responsive or not providing the service that parents want, if we could address that and fix that, we wouldn't be here right now. We wouldn't be here pushing for school choice. If schools were more responsive to what the needs of parents are, or what parents want, if they were more transparent, if they were more open, if they cared more about parents' opinions, then we wouldn't be here right now. We wouldn't be in this position, and we could all work together to fix the public schools. But that's not what most public schools.
We'd be all pushing on bail reform.
All right, so that was Tuesday.
Oh my goodness.
And then today, Trump announced that, or the White House announced that Trump is expected. Now we're going to federal level. Trump is expected to sign an executive order to fund school choice programs, to block grant money back to the states that have school choice programs, to help increase the amount of money that's available for kids to go to those schools. That is another fantastic executive order, another great indication that Trump is going to keep his promises.
Well, I hope this doesn't intercede with Randy Weingarten's, shuttle diplomacy in Ukraine. But I will say that it's funny because everyone's like, oh, well, because I have heard it said or read it in the popular media, people saying, oh, well, Trump just sees this kind of both the surge of this in Texas, and again trying to get out in front of the parade, bro. And I was like, Betsy DeVos is original Secretary of Education.
Yeah.
Is as pro school choice a person as there is. This isn't his first rodeo. Now, it probably is very galvanizing and stark to see that you realize all the pigs that are at the trough currently that aren't necessarily benefiting kids but are still putting money in their own pockets. You realize that all of them are organized against you. And again, we shouldn't do policy based on political retribution, but it really illustrates I would say the kind of the allegiance that they have going on the other side of this issue is basically one of just pork.
Yeah, and there was, some people were saying at the beginning, well, Trump's not a real supporter of school choice because he hasn't been very adamant on it and whatnot. And the fact is, Trump on a lot of issues thinks that there's some things that the federal government shouldn't do, right? Like he thinks the federal government shouldn't be involved in every single one of our issues. And education is one of those things. I mean, what he ran on was actually getting rid of the Department of Education. And so the fact that he didn't, stake his entire campaign on school choice, and for some people, that was worrisome, give the guy a break, on this. And so, and not only did he come out and say he's going to sign this EO or create this EO and sign it, but he also came out very strongly in support of the Tennessee school choice that passed the House yesterday. So that's not a win for Texas, but it's certainly a win in the school choice movement. So anyway, give the guy a break. And at this point now, he's been very unequivocal that he supports school choice. So that should placate most.
I will say one thing about the Tennessee thing. It was interesting to see the initial vote count and then the tweet and then the following vote count. There was Yeah, I was about to say when the tide goes out, you see you swimming naked, right? So
Exactly. All right. Well, let's go from that mental picture on to a different issue.
this is why we're an audio podcast.
The other big issue, we talk about all the time, is border security. That was the big issue of the week. It's the mass deportations that have been going on since the Trump took over. It's now been less than 2 weeks, and I mean the numbers are staggering, Derek, in terms of where we're at. Let me just set the stage. Border agents is the headline from Fox News. Border agents record shockingly low numbers of illegal crossings 1 week into the second Trump presidency. Not a single one of the 9 sectors in the southern border received more than 200 crossings on January 26th. The number of daily encounters only reached 582 in total on that day. 582, not 582,000, 582. The Del Rio sector, which at its peak was seeing 4,000 crossings a day, had only recorded 60 crossings. I mean, how do you, what happened?
I think that, I don't know how much more simpler I can make this. Like when you enforce the law as written and you don't hamstring those who are also seeking to do so as well, this is the kind of results you can expect. Now, look, were we able to completely get rid of illegal border crossings? No. I mean, but going from 4,000 to 60 to 60 again, as I proven earlier, I don't do math in public, but one of those is significantly lower than the other. I'm pretty sure.
Look, I think part of the thing that upsets me the most in this is that, I mean, think way back to 2023, when Biden was telling the country, when this is starting to get to be a fever pitch through 2022 and beyond, and Biden kept telling everybody, I can't do anything. I can't do anything without Congress. Congress has to pass a law. Congress has to pass a law.
Well, that per his worldview, that was an accurate thing.
Right.
And his worldview was fundamentally destroyed.
But then politically, it was pretty clear that wasn't tenable, right? And so he had to start doing some things. And most of what he did was reverse the reversals of Trump's policies, right? Remain in Mexico and Title 42 and those kinds of things. But it wasn't enough. There were still thousands of crossings. I mean, it said, in December of 2023, there were up to 4,000 crossings per day. I think and then here comes Trump. And he gets in office for 1 week, and it goes from 4,000 to 60, right? And it's just, I guess it's just so frustrating. Like this, did they just lie to everybody, or are they just completely and totally incompetent? Because clearly the executive branch can do this.
This is your first time working with politicians, right?
I guess. Maybe I'm just too naive or something.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would ever call you naive in this political space, but. No, but I mean, you illustrate it right. It's like it was the we can't do anything belies a certain political worldview that you have to look at what's unspoken in that comment, right? There's nothing I can do. Basically means there's nothing I can do that is politically popular that'll affect the changes that everyone wants that won't absolutely alienate me with my fringe base.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, there's nothing I can do. And it's like, he could have done all this stuff, but that would have been seen as mean. And like, the thing is, like, again, we can have the debate about, the merits of legal immigration as to what is the right number, what is the process in which it does. What we can't do that is we're standing behind our front door going, I don't know if I should let you in, while we're missing 2 walls of the house.
Yeah.
And people are coming in the side. And so that's one of the issues. And then, like, just the absolute, I don't know if there's a diplomatic way to say it. I know, again, we don't have Jefferson. Jefferson doesn't have a dump switch. So let's say that not giving a flip about, is a vibe. And like those way, like he did, I would have probably lost money if I had to bet on which Columbia would be destroyed first under the second Trump administration. And it turns out it was almost the country as opposed to the school. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, when they were like, we're not going to take our drug criminals back. And Trump's like, okay. I was like, if you want to
turn that plane around.
Yeah. I was like, if you want our business and you want our dollars in your economy, you better believe you're going
And
to.
that's a good segue back into the deportations, which is the other side of this. There's border security, which is going on, but then of course we've got all the video of people. That's the worst first policy. I mean, I love the fact the White House did that, because that was always the question. The media wants to portray deportations as kicking in the door and grabbing grandma and putting her on a bus, and that's of course not anybody's intention at all. We're going after the worst first. Lots of video from places like Chicago and L.A. and Dallas and other places where they're actually targeting these heinous criminals, people that are wanted for sexual assault and all this. And it's right there on the front page. It's right there every time you turn on Fox News or CNN. There is Trump making good on his promise to do the deportations, despite all of the criticism that he took and all the arrows that he took on this issue. There he is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And I love Tom Homan comes out and says, I'm not happy with the pace of deportations. Like this is a good start, but he's still not happy. He still thinks it's taking too long to get these guys out of the country.
It's like the joke about, he said good start, like the joke about lawyers in a pool, right?
Right, yeah.
That we won't say because we're far too polite. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And using, there actually are colorable debates about should the president have the ability to unilaterally affect tariffs. We wouldn't want him to affect the tax rate, what have you. But the fact that we actually have an administration willing to go to bat for the United States, for the American citizens, and just for what is essentially a absolute slam dunk of a political issue, that deportations are well above water on the Democrat side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the issues where
it's like 20 points in 10 years has moved to pro deportation.
Absolutely. And everyone thought this would be, the kids in Obama cages at the border, an AOC crying next to it. And no, it's not. People are seeing that was it, the one guy from I'm not going back to Haiti, and it's like,
thank you, Obama. Thank you.
Well, it's like,
thank you for everything you did for me.
You didn't have to cut the Trump ad for him, but on your way out. But that being said, it's like, no, you're not leaving because you're a person from a different place. You're leaving because you're a criminal who does crimes. Now you can go do crimes in Haiti.
Wanted for assault and violence and others. Another headline on immigration or border security. Abbott restarts building the buoys in the Rio Grande. He was tweeting out pictures and video of that. That, of course, was a very contentious issue between the federal government and the Biden administration in Texas, where they were preventing us from actually doing their job, which is to secure the border, whether it was the buoys in the Rio Grande or the concertina wire on the edges of the river. And so that's out there now. So we're continuing. And I think, to your point earlier, I think that shows that there's still a commitment there from Texas, that even though we know that the cavalry is coming and that Trump is doing his job and keeping his promises, that the state of Texas is still committed to continuing to help and protect our communities. The other one was Texas has sort of the same thing. Texas has deployed over 400 soldiers from the Texas Tactical Border Force to the Rio Grande Valley in collaboration with Donald Trump's efforts to secure the border, per a directive issued by Abbott on Monday. So continuing to commit resources there. Hopefully, we'll still see Abbott do that. What do you think, Derek?
Just talking to the governor, he's. It's pedal to the metal, and it's not coming up. I will say, and I flagged at the beginning, I do think, and I genuinely do think, we are going to see the form of Texas's border efforts transform a little bit, just because, again, look, we've never argued that the feds don't have primacy here. And the reason that, I would always say, look, we've fired every arrow in our, in a quiver. We used every tool in the toolbox. I don't know what else we're going to do. Now we're going to be able to function more as a partner in I wouldn't say a complete support role. We'll still be there with the feds as well. But basically being able to do what Texas is better arrayed to do, while the feds do what they're better arrayed to do. And I think it's just going to be a much more workable solution regardless.
So for today's show, I have prepared way too much, and we're coming to the end. So as our friends Carl and Wooly would say, there's just too much in the stack. Yeah. There's just too much in the stack to do. So we'll jump around.
The fastest 2 hours on radio.
Should we do, property tax is obviously a big issue. We could get to something there. We've also got the issue of, just announced today, of Trump downsizing the federal workforce.
Oh yeah, that's right into my veins. Yeah.
Okay, let's go there.
Yeah. He basically, if you look at it, he basically said, it started off with the, get your butts back to the office. And of course, it's because, again, nobody ever accused the federal workforce of being tone sensitive or not have, or, being free of a tin ear.
Just to set up real quick, Trump has said for certain federal employees, a lot, I think it's like, how many is it? 2 million people? It could be up to 2 million people. You get 8 months severance. Right, so severance you get to.
Oh, this is the second part.
This is you get 8 months severance, but you gotta tell us by February 6th. So after that, you just get fired, and then you get nothing. Yeah. But if you volunteer to go find another job, you'll get 8 months severance to go do that.
And I think many of these folks have quit already. But the whole thing was the ordering people back to the office. Yeah. Well, like people were saying like, oh well, I was. Assigned to be the, inspector at this nuclear reactor. And I moved, 500 miles away across the country. I didn't know I was supposed to go back to the office. Like, well, Well, I think in the, obviously with all the Doge stuff, all that devil's going to be in the details. But like, I have a feeling that like Elon's going to get handed an absolute like unimpeachable case that like the federal workforce was so full of like just bloat and waste.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to justify like these positions. They're not going to like rehire for them. Just going to let them go away. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. And with the severance package, I'd say that's a mixed bag. I mean, I would probably give 8 minutes of severance as opposed to 8
Too
months.
Too generous, huh?
Yeah. But hey, you know what? I'd kill them with kindness, I guess.
In between posting videos of rockets and trolling people with memes, Elon does post some of those statistics that they're, just the early statistics. And it's something crazy. I mean, 50% of people that weren't going into work. I mean, there was a viral video that went crazy on the internet, or it was a video that went viral from Libs of TikTok where there was a contractor who had worked for 8 months at one of the departments, and she basically just like told everybody, nobody goes into work, nobody does their job. You can tell people aren't even online for days or weeks at a time because they never log into Teams, and that's where you're supposed to be doing all your work.
It's not all bad if people aren't logging into Teams.
Yeah, that actually, and maybe because of Teams' fault, but anyway, there were all these indicators that people weren't actually like showing up, for days and days at a time, and there, Doge just started to put out some of these statistics, and it's just like, what are we paying for? I mean, these people get these jobs and they know they absolutely can't get fired. If they don't do their job, then the response is just to hire another person to do that job so that they can, just sit around. So, I'm sure that there are some people who got into government and they were idealistic and they take their jobs very seriously and they're trying to do good. And I'm sure that those people will stand out and will ultimately, keep their jobs or rise to the right level.
I wish the both of them luck.
Yeah. And their names are Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. But anyway, this again is one of those things where it's just like, it's almost, it's funny. I mean, these are the kinds of things, that we used to sit around at the Heritage Foundation and, stroke our non-beards and think, man, I wish we could just do this. Or we have, these questions if you could wave a magic wand and do one thing in federal government to, fix it or whatever, this is the kind of stuff you would do. And Trump is just waving his magic wand, every 12 hours.
I was told you couldn't wish for more wishes. Apparently that does not apply.
So we will absolutely wish him all the luck. All right. Well, we're going to have to skip the rest of the stack, unfortunately, because we're getting here. And this was just kind of our, news of the week. We usually have a guest, and we'll go back to having guests for next week. But we need to catch up on this stuff, And there, every time we have a guest, we want to make sure we talk to them and what they want to talk about. But sometimes we want to talk about some things, like Patrick Mahomes. And,
that's if you want Jefferson to run our show, that's all we talk about.
And why Jefferson has changed jersey 3 times during the show, just because he can't figure out which one to wear. All right. But we will go to what to watch for. We like to end on that note. So I'll start with you, Derek. What are we watching for over the next couple weeks?
Well, I know what you're going to pick, so I'll take the less obvious one. I can't wait to see, because cards were due. Can't remember if it was today or yesterday, but we're due into the speaker's office as to what people's committee preferences are. Now, we haven't talked a lot about the way the House is structured now, how they got rid of 8 committees, or was it 6 committees, and then created 2 new ones. I think they got rid of 6, created 2 new ones, but then kind of let let
Small
flourish.
government right there. We lost four committees.
But that's the thing, though. A lot of the ambit that these committees covered, which needed to get discussed still, were created in these subcommittees in the standing committees. So it'll be interesting to see who in those who gets put on this committee, who gets put on this subcommittee. Because I think that's really going to tell you how Speaker Burrows is orienting himself to those particular subject matter areas. And I think that there's going to be a lot of inference that you'll be able to make from that once those are announced.
So that'll be interesting to look for. No surprises in the Senate, though, on committee hearing.
Oh, those committees dropped like the second or third day or something. I remember we were actually in the middle of recording. Yeah, so it would have been on a Wednesday when we were when it dropped.
Well, I'll be looking for surprises on Governor Abbott's call on Sunday. This is kind of like not the Super Bowl, but this is Super Bowl for nerdy people. Yeah, for nerdy people is on Sunday we'll be sitting around watching it online or wherever we can get it, and be putting out rapid response and do all the things that we do on the nerdy political side. So anyway, I'd be interested to see if there's any surprises there. Anything that may be a priority for TPPF that we may not be thinking about that would be really interesting to see, and sort of and how fast can we gear up to support those efforts, and depending on what they are. So we will be watching with bated breath on Sunday to see what the governor says.
Yeah, and you never know. He could add, we're banning the use of black magic from the referees in the state, and so that might have some flash effects on your Cowboys. I'm sorry, but at least it means that we're not going to have much of the Chiefs coming down.
And I am not claiming the Cowboys, especially after they went and did the same thing they always do, which is hire some puppet coach.
Yeah, it's a Shane Gillis, the Shane Gillis quote. Whoa, that is way worse.
They should hire Shane Gillis. They would get more out of Shane Gillis than they will out of.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
But again, we need the governor to ban black magic in football.
All right.
So no more devil magic. I'm sorry.
We should ban Jerry Jones from being a GM is what we should do. All right. And we forgot my favorite part of the show, which is the shameless plug, so I'll put it right here at the end, is that we have our big policy summit coming up at the end of next month, or sort of middle of next month. February 19th through the 21st is the Texas Policy Summit. I believe there's like 2 or 3 registrations still left, so you can go out and secure that if you can be here in Austin with us. TexasPolicySummit.com. You can sign up there. You can see, I think we're coming in, starting to get most of our confirmations of who are going to be there, but it's it's a lot of the same people that you might expect to talk about the big issues of the session. We've already secured Senator Cruz, Governor Abbott, and Lieutenant Governor Patrick will all be there, and maybe some surprises that we'll be announcing here pretty quick. Have some surprises. So look out for that. And you can sign up at TexasPolicySummit.com. But if you can't make it to Texas, we live stream everything, and so all of the panels, all the keynotes, all the plenary sessions will all be live streamed. And then if you still miss it, we post everything within about 24 hours online. So if you're media and you heard something and you want to go back and catch it or clip it or whatever, we're going to have it all there for you.
Gives you plenty of time to take things out of context and make a smear about it. So,
all right. Well, that's it for our show. Thank you to our producer. Good luck to you, sir, in a couple of Sundays with your Chiefs. Meanwhile, I'm going to continue the 30-year reign of crying about my Cowboys. And Derek, is a heck of a season for you and your Detroit Lions.
Remember, Steelers guy, but Lions is secondary.
You can claim them. They're good.
Hey, 1 and done or 2 and done, it's all the same.
Awesome. All right, and thank you for always watching, for always listening. We appreciate you being with us for our show. As we like to say always at the end, do good and risk the consequences. In the immortal words of Sam Houston, we'll see you next time.